Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of BallOnly. Today, in this episode, what we're going to be looking at is the free agency signings that have been going on in the NBA. Just because obviously a lot has happened over the past couple of days, so I figured it'd be a good amount to go over. We're going to start from kind of the bottom, working our way to the top for some of the smaller news and free agency to the real top stories. So the Nets signed Joe Harris for $2 million, or not 2 million, 2 years, 16 million, averaged 10 points per game, or about 11 points per game last year for the Nets. They also signed Ed Davis to 1 year for 4.4 million, averaged 5.3 points per game, about 7.4 rebounds per game for the Trailblazers last year. He's a power forward that I actually really like. He's young, pretty athletic, plays solid defense. Obviously not a great scorer, can't really shoot the rock well, but he has a lot of potential for his size and athleticism. But he can kind of bring something that Nets team needs, which is more talent. The Suns signed Trevor Ariza to 1 year, 15 million. Averaged 11.7 points per game last year for the Rockets and 4.4 rebounds per game. He's one of the best wing defenders that there are in the NBA right now. A little bit older than he was, on the Lakers and stuff like that, but he's still able to get in the passing lanes, can shoot the rock well, can play great lockdown defense on the perimeter. One of the key factors in the Houston Rockets' success last year. So that'll be interesting to see how he helps Booker and DeAndre Ayton kind of age better, teach them a lot, probably help them play a lot better defense. And I think it's a really good pickup for the Suns. Next we have the Pistons. They picked up Glenn Robinson III for 2 years on 8.3 million with a team option, so they can pick him up in the second year if they want to. Averaged 4.1 points per game last year for the Pacers. Didn't really have a lot of success with them last year. I feel part of that is because of Victor Oladipo kind of being the star of that team right now. A lot of minutes were given to Oladipo, deservingly so. So Glenn Robinson didn't really have a lot of time to do much. But I think on the Pistons, he'll kind of be able to step out of his shell a little bit more. He will probably get a lot more minutes than he did on the Pacers, so it'll be cool to see how he develops on that team. He's young, very athletic, can shoot the rock well. I know he won the dunk contest, I think, 2 years ago, even though it wasn't that great of a dunk contest. But he still has a long ways to go. Jose Calderon, they also signed for 1 year, 2.4 million, averaged 4.5 points per game, 1.5 rebounds and 2.1 assists. Not really one of my favorite players. Defensively, he's kind of lackluster, so that kind of worries me. I'm a Detroit fan, so I always kind of want to see them do well. So I hope everything with him, kind of works out in their favor. The Blazers signed Nick Stauskas for average 4.4 points per game, 1 assist, 1.6 rebounds. Not, the greatest pickup. Kind of a backup for CJ. Didn't really do much on the Nets last year behind, I think it was D'Angelo, or I don't know if it'd be D'Angelo. I think it'd be Joe Harris, actually, because he's playing at that 2 spot. Next we have the Knicks. They signed Luke Cornett, 1 year, $1.6 million, and they also signed Mario Hezonja for 1 year, $6.5 million. Averaged about 10 points per game last year for the Magic. One of their better scorers, which they didn't really have a lot of, but seeing him work with Kristaps and Frank Ntilikina and his Cantor, all of them, that'll be interesting to see. He's a good foreign player, one of the top prospects from his class, but didn't really form into the type of player that everyone is kind of expecting him. Raptors re-signed Fred VanVleet, 2 years, $18 million, averaged 8.6 points per game, 2.2 assists, and 2 rebounds per game. One of the better role players on that team, fits into the system well, helped them run their offense very well. During the Cleveland Cavaliers series, didn't really do a lot because that team didn't really have a whole lot of success as a whole. But in the Wizards series before that, and during kind of the end of the regular season, he had really started to pick it up and really started contributing to that team well. Showed a lot of effort out on the court, which I really like. The Grizzlies signed Omri Caspi to 1 year. The salary was not released. He averaged 5.7 points per game and 3.8 rebounds per game. Good shooter for the Warriors last year. Didn't play a lot, but he can't really do a lot on the court besides shoot. That's where he makes his money. Not the greatest defender, but it'll be good to see with Jaren Jackson that they drafted. He's been playing well in Summer League, or for his first game at least. It'll be cool to see how he helps that team kind of get back to where they were. They were always kind of a playoff mainstay, and since Conley's been getting injured, they lost Vince Carter last year. Also, Matt Barnes was a big part of that team. They weren't really able to put it together this year, even though it's a solid squad that they have. Unfortunately, they couldn't keep Tyreke Evans, but it'll be good to see if Mike Conley can stay healthy, Marc Gasol can get back into form, and see how they can help Jaren Jackson grow and hopefully get this team back into the playoffs. The Bucks signed Ersan Ilyasova for 3 years, $21 million, averaged 10.9 points per game for the Sixers last year, and also 5.9 rebounds. Good outside shooter. Doesn't really do a whole lot other than that. Can play decent defense, but the 3-point is where he makes his money. Can get a few rebounds here and there, obviously, but for the Sixers at least, he was a good part of that team. So it'll be good to see if he can kind of resurge in his old stomping grounds in Milwaukee. They gave Jabari Parker a qualifying offer as well, which I'm glad to see because that would be absolutely stupid to just kind of let him go. In my opinion, he's a great young talent. I know he's had a lot of injuries so far, but he's bounced back from those injuries extremely well. Good shooter, very athletic, even with the ACL tears, which was very surprising to me because I was expecting him to lose a lot more bounce than he did. But it's a good thing to see. He can play solid defense, tall, long, strong. A good pairing with Giannis Antetokounmpo. During the playoffs last year, there was a lot of problems with him and the coach with playing time because I don't really understand what was going on there, but I don't think the coach was using him to his fullest abilities, which is unfortunate because I feel like they could be a really successful team with Jabari being a part of it. Hopefully they can figure that out. I thought initially it was kind of a mistake to get rid of Jason Kidd, so I feel like that kind of started off on the wrong foot for them that season. But I hope to see them be more successful in the future. The Clippers re-signed Avery Bradley for 2 years, $25 million. Average 14.3 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, and 2 assists. Very good defender. That's his game. At the 2 guard position, Kyrie Irving even said, like, one-on-one, he's probably the best person that can guard him in the league, which is a very high praise from probably the hardest person to guard in the league besides maybe like Kevin Durant and stuff like that. But keeping him for that Clippers roster, especially with the loss of DeAndre, will be good to kind of keep that defense somewhat intact. But obviously it's not going to do everything that they need. I don't see them going very far. They're probably going to start looking to rebuild, which is probably the right plan for them. The Wizards signed Jeff Green to 1 year for a minimum. And last year, for the Cavs, I know they got a lot of shit because they felt like some of the teams weren't really, or some of the teammates weren't really helping out LeBron in the playoffs. But in my opinion, Jeff Green was probably one of the best players on that team for that playoff run. He was playing very hard, putting all of his effort out on the court, made a lot of big plays, was one of their more consistent scorers between him and Kyle Korver. A little bit of Kevin Love in there, but I think that was a very good pickup for the Wizards. They also got Dwight Howard for a 1 year mid-level exception worth $5.3 million, which is surprising to me that he accepted not that much money, especially with the numbers that he put up in Charlotte. Obviously, Charlotte didn't want him, traded him to Brooklyn. Brooklyn, he didn't want to play, so they bought him out. Averaged 16.6 points per game, 12.5 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks last year. So mixing him in with the Wizards, it's kind of an athletic team. So with Bradley Beal, John Wall, Otto Porter, all of them, they're a bit more athletic. I believe they're getting rid of Marcin Gortat because there are a lot of locker room issues. And I hope to see Dwight Howard kind of make sure that the locker room stays positive in there, kind of doesn't create the type of locker room problems that he's had in the past with, Charlotte. That's why they got rid of him. I don't think things were going well in the Lakers locker room either when he was there. Stuff like that. Just hope he can kind of stay out of the way of any drama this season. The Jazz re-signed Derek Favors to 2 years, $36 million. Averaged 12.3 points per game, 7.2 rebounds, and 1.3 assists. Big part of that Jazz team last year. Helped a lot in that OKC series. Was hustling hard, getting a lot of rebounds, playing great defense in the paint with Gobert, kind of helping to keep that area away from the OKC team, and really showed in how they kind of took them apart with a lot of their play. So I'm glad to see that they're keeping Derek Favors, one of my favorite players on their team. They're also keeping Exum, who averaged 8.1 points per game last year. In the Rockets series is where he kind of shined, and it was very good to see. He suffered a torn ACL, I believe, a couple of years ago. Hadn't really seen much playing time, hadn't seen much efficiency. So it's cool to kind of see him resurge a little bit in the playoffs, kind of show up in the big moment. And I think that's what pushed him over the edge to re-sign him, to keep him, to make sure that they keep that young core together with him and Donovan. That's going to be one of the scarier teams in the West. I think they'll surprise a lot of people like they did last year. Next, we have the Mavs. They signed DeAndre Jordan for 1 year, $24 million, averaged 12 points per game, 15.2 rebounds. You know what you're gonna get out of DeAndre Jordan when you put him on the court. He's gonna give you defense, rebounding, and you're gonna be able to throw a lot of lobs to him. That's his game. It'll be cool to see how he mixes with Luka Doncic and Dennis Smith and Dirk and all of them. They also re-signed Dirk for 1 year for about $5 million. Him and DeAndre in the front court will kind of be cool, just because he's really going to be able to stretch the floor for DeAndre, kind of give him a lot more space to grab boards, give him a lot more space in the post. Maybe he can start developing a few more hooks, stuff like that. I'm not sure. DeAndre is one of my favorite players just because he's an exciting player to watch. He's going to give you some athletic plays, so it's definitely good basketball when he's on the court. Let's see. The Spurs, they re-signed Rudy Gay to a 1 year, $10 million deal. Averaged 11.5 points per game for them last year. 5.1 rebounds per game. He had to step up a lot with Kawhi being out for most of the season. I think he did well in that. He ruptured his Achilles last or a season before this one, and that can really affect you as a player. Usually, there's a lot of drop-offs, so it's good to see him kind of keep his consistency. He was having a really good year for the Kings last year before that happened. So seeing him kind of being able to still play and retain some efficiency is definitely good to see. They also got back Marco BallOnly for 2 years on $12 million. Averaged 12.1 points per game. Did really well for the Sixers last year, helping them to kind of do work in the playoffs. Spaces the floor for them, which they really need, especially with Ben Simmons not being able to shoot the greatest right now. But I'm sure he's working on developing that. So hopefully that loss for them won't be too big, which I'm sure it won't. Speaking of the Sixers, they re-signed JJ Redick, which was really glad for me to see, for 1 year, 12 to 13 million, 17.1 points per game last year. One of the best spot-up shooters that there are in the league right now. Can really put up big numbers on a nightly basis. He can make some threes where people are just right in his face. As soon as he catches the ball, it's a quick release. It's sometimes poetry to see. Probably one of my favorite shooters in the league right now. The Pelicans, they signed Elfrid Payton for 1 year. The financial part of that I couldn't find it. Averaged 12.2 points per game. 6.2 assists and 4.3 rebounds per game. Played for the Suns most of the season last year, after he was sent from the Magic. Kind of a Rondo-esque player to me. Can pass the ball, can score a little bit, can shoot a little bit better, but can also grab rebounds. Good playmaker. Can defend pretty decently. Another interesting pickup for them was Julius Randle for 2 years on $18 million. averaged 16 points per game last year, 8 rebounds, 2.6 assists. One of my favorite young power forwards, just because, he's athletic, he can shoot. He seems to always be adding something to his game, which is good to see. Fast down the court, can handle the ball. Very well-rounded power forward. I think besides Anthony Davis, he'll be very successful in that system. Then with Drew, they don't really have a lot of wing players, unfortunately. But hopefully they can fix that. I know they have like Pondexter and I think Etwan Moore, but those guys aren't really always effective. And Julius Randle can even space the floor for them too. But so can Anthony Davis. So it gives them a lot of versatility on that lineup. The Magic, they re-signed Aaron Gordon for 4 years, $84 million. Averaged 17.6 points per game and about 8 rebounds per game last year. I'm glad to see him stay with the Magic, just because I wanted to see that duo of him and Mo Bamba. Mo Bamba, was one of my favorite players coming into the draft. I'd seen him doing interviews with like KG and a bunch of different other players. He really talks like he has, or plays in college like he has a big fire kind of to play in the league. Loves basketball. Really seems like he's going to be one of those guys to put what he has out on the court. Give his all every game. Kind of, give you 100% every time that you see him. And that's always an exciting player to see. And 9 times out of 10, if you do that, you're going to be successful. The Timberwolves, they re-signed Derrick Rose for 1 year, $2.1 million, averaged 8.4 points per game and 1.5 assists. Did really well for the Timberwolves after he got traded from the Cavs. Played well for the Cavs, and then once he got traded to the Timberwolves, he kind of seemed to pick it up even a little bit more. I'm curious if Coach Thibodeau had a little bit to do with that, kind of reuniting with him and also Jimmy Butler. Seeing him kind of not resurge, but kind of incline a little bit from what he did last season was definitely pleasing to see, just because he used to be one of the greatest point guards in the league, and now kind of tailed back from that. But it's good to see him kind of help out the Timberwolves young team. Did a lot during that Rockets series, trying to help them stay alive, even though it wasn't the longest series. But he definitely played his role well. They also signed Anthony Tolliver for 1 year, $5 to $6 million. Was a great shooter for the Pistons last year. Did a lot for them on the court. I was kind of sad to see him go, just because I had always liked him on the court. Played hard, decent rebounder, but shooting was his game. So that's in my opinion a good pickup for them. I know they're having problems with Jimmy Butler right now. They wanted to offer him a max deal, but apparently he's not happy with the youth on the team. He feels that they play kind of nonchalant, specifically Karl-Anthony Towns, which was kind of crazy for me to see, just because Karl-Anthony Towns doesn't play nonchalant to me. It's more of he doesn't really take advantage of what he needs to. For instance, during the Rockets series, whenever they'd switch CP3 on him because of a screen, something like that, he didn't really take advantage of it and take him to the post, which is kind of disappointing to see, because I feel like that series could have been more competitive if he did. or at least been a different story. So I guess I can see where Jimmy Butler might be coming from, but I think he used the wrong wording to describe it. But obviously, I don't know what things are like in the locker room, so it might either be there or maybe he's really talking about on the court. OKC, they re-signed Jeremy Grant for 3 years, $27 million. Averaged 8.4 points per game for them last year, 3.9 rebounds. Good athletic, small forward, power forward mix. Not the greatest shooter. Pretty young though, so it's kind of, you got to give him time, see what he can do. But he's not the greatest, young player there is, but he's up there in my opinion, in terms of, plays hard, really crashes the boards. During the Jazz series, he was kind of helping them to stay alive in a couple of the games. He was really going to the boards hard, trying to get offensive rebounds, making a lot of hustle plays, which is always good to see. This re-signed PG for 3 years, plus a player option worth $137 million. Obviously, he, didn't do what people expected him to do last season, which was unfortunate, but, it happens. I don't think that those struggles will continue for him. One of the best players in the league, one of the best two-way players in the league, in my opinion, played great defense the whole year, was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year most of the year. Didn't, on the offensive end, was obviously the struggles. Picked it up in the playoffs a little bit, until about, game 6, he kind of struggled against the Jazz, but in all reality, he's gonna be able to give you points, give you rebounds, give you assists, stuff like that. Good isolation player, can somewhat play off the ball, which is, I think, might be the struggle in OKC, is that they have a lot of isolation players, and I think they need more people who can kind of run off the ball, catch and shoot, stuff like that. Carmelo Anthony also will opt in to return, which I don't think they wanted, because they kind of are looking to buy out his contract, or at least that's a rumor that I've heard. I'm not sure if they're going to do that, because it's a big contract, so they don't kind of just want to waste it. Didn't, play great last year. Doesn't want to accept the bench role, which is, I think that's one of the main parts of their struggles, is that he's not willing to give up his starting position, so they can have a better season, which is disappointing for me to see, because at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for your team. You can't really just be all about yourself. That doesn't work in basketball at all. Nerlens Noel, they signed for one 1-year deal plus 1-year player option. Average 4.4 points per game. The contract was for $4.4 million. My fault. Average 5.6 rebounds a game, and about 4 points per game. 0.7 assists for the Mavericks last year. Wasn't the greatest. He's had a lot of struggles with assists. Hasn't really done the best. I think his strength is on defense. He's big, athletic. Can't really shoot the rock well, unfortunately. Can shoot free throws pretty decently, but his struggles come from like the three, or which he doesn't really shoot threes at all. So he's limited at that center spot. But him backing up Steven Adams, I would think is the plan. So they'll have kind of consistent defense and rebounding, whichever lineup they run, I think was the goal for that. So that'll be interesting to see how that mixes in. They also re-signed Raymond Felton for a 1-year minimum deal. He's kind of just, playmaker, shooter, doesn't really produce a whole lot of numbers, but in basketball, you kind of have to realize that it's not always about the numbers. It depends how you're defending consistently, if you're making the right passes during your plays that you're running, how you're fitting into that offense. It's not all about, oh, he averaged this many assists. There's also there's like primary assist, which is ones that they count up. There's secondary assists, tertiary assists, stuff like that other players also help to contribute to, that is kind of overlooked and people don't really pay attention to, but it's also a very important part of the game. The Celtics re-signed Aaron Baines for 2 years, $11 million, averaged 6 points per game, 5.4 rebounds per game. Great defender for them. Probably played the best defense I've seen for him in a couple years. Not really a scorer. Can shoot the mid-range well, and grab rebounds, and that's his game. He's kind of a garbage points guy. Get you your offensive rebounds. Gonna have to work for his points in the post. If he gets the ball there, nothing really right now is like just given to him. The Pacers, they signed Doug McDermott for 3 years, $22 million. Averaged 7.8 points per game. Good young shooting guard, or in my opinion he is. Shoots the threes pretty well. Mainly a scorer. Doesn't really do a whole lot else other than trying to score the ball. Can defend at a decent level, but not at like a premier level. But he's a specialist, and I think he'll help that team out a good amount. They had Thaddeus Young as well as Corey Joseph, who opted into their contracts. Thaddeus Young averaged about 12 points per game for them last year, 6.3 rebounds. Corey averaged about 8 points per game, 3.2 assists, and 3.3 rebounds. Thaddeus Young was very, very important to their success during their 7-game series with the Cavs. He played hard for every time I saw him out on the court, went for every offensive rebound that he could, got a lot of putbacks, got those hustle points that people really don't pay attention to, but they're important in the flow of the game. When a team's missing, or when a team's kind of locking you up, you're missing, and someone's able to get that offensive putback, or at least a rebound, it kind of deflates the team. They're kind of not so much out for that second defensive possession in a row. So people like that are able to always get you offensive rebounds are very key in your team's success. Corey Joseph was also good playmaker for them at that point guard spot. Most of these guys kind of shine in the playoffs, which is interesting to me. It's cool to see how they really matured quick. They have a couple older players, but they're decently young. So seeing them do what they did to the Cavs in the playoffs was very impressive to me. They also signed Tyreek Evans on a 1-year, $12 million deal, which is very good for a player of that caliber to me. Averaged 19.4 points per game, 5.1 rebounds per game, and 5.2 assists. Played, on the Grizzlies last year. They didn't have much success. I apologize, but they had a lot of problems on that team. Marc Gasol was having problems with their front office, I believe, and Mike Conley was out, so there was a lot going on. But Tyreek Evans really kind of stepped up and took a leadership role on that team. Didn't lead them to the greatest record, but he definitely put his part. That Pacers team for me in the East, they're gonna be probably one of the better teams. Probably top 4 seed is what I see for them. Victor Oladipo, Miles Turner is probably one of the better young, little underrated center for me personally. Can shoot the three very well. Can block shots. Very well. He's very what I call well-rounded. Can pass the ball. Can rebound. Athletic. Very athletic. Quick down the court. Doesn't really handle the ball, but he can get his points in the post. Keep possessions alive for them. So that team for me will definitely make some noise in the Eastern Conference next year. The Nuggets, so they signed Will Barton for 4 years on $54 million. Averaged 15.7 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 4.1 assists. To me, that's a good signing. Just it's not a whole lot of money, especially for a young player of his caliber. Really athletic. I know he was in the dunk contest where I think it was Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon went at it. He's good defender. Can't really shoot the rock efficiently from the three, but he can get his points. And the Nuggets keeping that core with Barton, Murray, Gary Harris, and Jokic, who they also signed for 5 years, $148 million. Keeping them together to me. They also had Paul Millsap. I don't know how I kind of left him out, but they can. Obviously, with some of the teams that are forming in the West, it's hard to compete. But to me, even though there's a lot to go up against, they're definitely one of my favorite teams in the Western Conference. Especially with Jokic, who is very underrated. Average 18.5 points per game, 10.7 rebounds, and 6.1 assists. For his passing is absolutely ridiculous. He can make some of the craziest passes that I've seen, from a center at least. Just can thread a needle, make the full court passes, like from one end, completely accurately into the shooting pocket to his teammate who's on the complete other side of the court. And that type of center is just special, and they really need to focus on keeping him and kind of forming that team around him. I think time for the bigger ones. Okay, so for the Lakers, which I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard about, signed LeBron for 3 years, plus 1 year for a player option, $154 million. KCP, 1 year, $12 million. Average, 32.4 points per game, 5.4 rebounds. Lance signed for 1 year, $4.5 million, 9.2 points per game, 3 assists, 5.2 rebounds. JaVale McGee, to a minimum deal, 4.8 points per game, 2.6 rebounds per game for the Warriors last year. Lost Julius Randle, but they did get Rajon Rondo for 1 year, $9 million, averaged 8.3 points per game, 4.0 rebounds, and 8.2 assists. So a lot of noise for them. Obviously, it was shocking to me that LeBron re-signed with them, just because of how soon it was. They hadn't really made a move for any other star. Hadn't gotten a trade for Kawhi Leonard, which is, a complicated situation right now because they want to trade with either them or the Sixers, and for that they're asking like a lot of, obviously Kawhi Leonard is worth a lot, but I feel like the fact that he doesn't want to play for them, reduces the value that he has for those teams, in my opinion. For the Sixers, they were asking for, I think, 3 future first round picks, as well as 2 of their players. I think it was Dario Saric and Robert Covington. I think that'd be, a decent trade for the Spurs and the Sixers, just because, or I think it might have been either Markelle or Robert Covington. But for the Sixers, obviously adding Kawhi Leonard is going to improve your team. With a point guard like Ben Simmons right now, he's going to be able to set the table for Kawhi. He can score, going to take a lot of pressure off Kawhi. I think what Kawhi didn't like and why he kind of wanted to be traded is that he didn't like having to play the ISO all the time, or not necessarily the ISO all the time, but like having to always have the ball in his hand. I don't think that's where he's most comfortable. That's hasn't been really where he worked the past like couple of seasons when is Tony Parker and Tim Duncan kind of heading the train. So I just don't think he was comfortable in that role. But I hope to see him like flourish with whichever team he goes to. I know for the Lakers, I believe they're asking for Ingram and Kuzma, as well as 2 first-round picks, and I think they wanted to like swap picks for them, or swap a couple picks. So I don't know if I'd give that up as the Lakers. I know it's Kawhi Leonard, but I feel like those 2 are really integral parts of that team's young core. I'd probably give it up just because it's Kawhi Leonard, but I probably wouldn't throw away as many picks. Maybe not swap them, but also with their new team, they're going to be more successful. So those picks value, they're kind of falling off already just because they got LeBron. Obviously, they're going to do pretty well in the West, so those picks are really high value, and I think that's why the Spurs are kind of also wanting to swap the picks. I think that Lakers team will be fun to watch, just because it's going to be a young, athletic team. I feel like the pace is going to be faster, maybe a lot more fast break basketball, a lot more transition. Hopefully, they can get a good defensive scheme. I want to see what Luke Walton can kind of teach them for what they have set up, what their system is going to be, stuff like that. Obviously, it's going to be LeBron centric, but it's Lonzo Ball. I think him and Rondo is going to be an interesting pairing, because I saw a report that Rondo believes at the end of training camp he's going to start. Which, if I was the Lakers personally, I don't think I'd do, just because I feel like him and Rondo are very similar players. They're both great passers. They can't really shoot the rock well, but Lonzo's a lot younger. So he has a lot of time to kind of regain his jump shot from what it was in college. They can both rebound the ball, play a little bit of defense. So that duo, or not really duo because they're not going to be playing much together, but those two, trying to fight for minutes is going to be very interesting. I think he can teach a lot to Lonzo, and I think he'll kind of push him to kind of get a lot better. That way he can keep his spot. KCP, good athletic shooter, can play defense well. He's definitely a good keep for them. Lance is another one that was kind of iffy with a lot of people, just because all the, blowing on LeBron's ear, stuff like that, always kind of make him annoyed. I don't think that's going to be, detrimental to their play, just because I think at the end of the day, they just respect each other's game. Everyone has their own type of way that they play. Lance likes to get in people's heads. LeBron just kind of likes to play the game. So I don't think they see it as, LeBron hates Lance, Lance hates LeBron, etc., etc. They know what each other is capable of, and the way the league is now too. It's more of a camaraderie based thing. No one really is at each other's throats. They're, a lot of them are friends, stuff like that. So it makes for melding the teams kind of a lot easier too. JaVale McGee, I see that as a decent pickup for them. I'm not sure if they're going to be re-signing Brook Lopez, and if so, I'm not sure if they're going to start him or JaVale. I would think they would start Brook, just because he kind of provides more spacing for them. He can shoot the three a lot better than JaVale. Good post scorer. Can rebound, play defense. JaVale's kind of more. He's not as well rounded as Brook Lopez is. They're both kind of slow up and down the court. JaVale's a little more athletic though, but he can't really do much on offense. But he can provide you a lot of rebounding and a few blocks, maybe one or two a game. What I think LeBron leaving means for the Cavs is kind of like a rebuilding. Colin Sexton, who they picked up in the draft, I believe is a very good point guard selection for them. I remember last year during one of his college games, he had to play 3v5, and he actually was able to keep that team in the game. And that was kind of an amazing thing for me to see, along with a lot of his other games. He was a very, very good point guard, and I hope that he can find success on the Cavs. I know they're looking to trade Kevin Love. I'm thinking that they'll probably be looking to trade him for some first-round draft picks, or maybe some younger players, just so that they can kind of rebuild that team from the ground up and give it some more energy. Because right now, a lot of the players are pretty old, and a lot of people they kind of see LeBron switching teams as him not being as good of a player, and I really don't like that. I think LeBron's obviously one of the greatest players ever to play the game. And it's just annoying to me when people see players moving around to different teams. They automatically take it as that player is worse. And that's not the case, because if that makes them worse, you wouldn't be worried about them moving to a different team, making a super team, stuff like that. But the greatness of a player should not be, dependent on the fact that they played for more teams. Where you play does not affect how great of a player you are. What affects how great of a player you are is how you play on the court. And it's very annoying to see people who say, oh, because he moved to this team, he sucks. He's not as good as he was before because he moved to this team. That's not how it works. I'm not saying, Kobe isn't good because, he stayed on the Lakers for 20 years. He's, top 3, top 4 player of all time. Top 3. But, LeBron moving to Miami, and then moving back to Cleveland, moving to the Lakers, that shouldn't have a hold on how good of a player he is. Shouldn't, like, a lot of people bring it up when, they're talking about him and MJ. But, that's not really on the court. It's just where they're playing. So that's just an argument that I don't like for that. You can use anything else, but I don't see it. Even with players like Kevin Durant, played great was an MVP in OKC. Moved to the Warriors. A lot of people, call him a snake, stuff like that. But that's I don't care about that, like calling him a snake and stuff like that. But it's just don't be like, oh, he sucks because he moved there. That's kind of dumb in my opinion. I just think you should judge by how they do on the court, which in LeBron and in KD's case, they both did very well. So it's kind of not, up for discussion that they're worse because they went to that different team. In fact, I think, being able to win, like, in different systems is impressive. Being able to adjust so quickly for Kevin Durant when a lot of people are thinking, oh, they're, not going to have enough shots to go around, stuff like that. That was, cool to see that he was kind of able to dispel all that talk. And, this just coming from me as a bit, basketball fan. Even won 2 Finals MVPs, was the big dog in, OKC, and was still able to be, the big dog on the Warriors. And, they're keeping him for another 1 year plus another year added on for $4.3 million, which I kind of want to see him leave, not because I just want that team to break up, or not that I want that team to break up, but because I feel like a lot of times the Warriors fans don't even appreciate him, just because when he's playing and maybe Steph might be out, Clay might be out, Draymond might be out, and they're kind of having their struggles. They might lose a couple games here and there. They always point the finger at Kevin Durant. They always say, oh, if he was off the team, we wouldn't be having these problems right now. He holds the ball too much, dribbles too much, tries to score too much, stuff like that. It's bullshit. He got 2 Finals MVPs for you guys. Don't pester him like that. When he's out and the Warriors are doing well, everyone says, see, we don't need Kevin Durant. That's stupid. they say we could win the championship without him, when in fact the only reason that they won, the first championship really against the Cavs was because they had no Kyrie or no Kevin Love. They only beat them, so they never really beat them at full strength with that team. So I definitely think that Kevin Durant was necessary for them to be able to beat that team. Otherwise, it might be a different story had they had Kyrie in 15-16. But I don't really like to get into a lot of the what if stuff because it's never something that you'll never know. So yeah, just moving on from that. They had DeMarcus Cousins, who signed for a $5.3 million contract for 1 year. Obviously this signing was very surprising. Probably going to be the last one that I'm going to do. But when you hear kind of the reports that they were talking about, it's a little bit understandable because what DeMarcus wanted was he wanted a max. Coming off an Achilles rupture, a lot of teams didn't really want to sign him for a long-term deal, which is kind of it's very understandable. But at the same time, you can understand where DeMarcus was coming from, where he wanted kind of like that safety net, that knowing that they wanted to keep him for a long time. But the thing with the Achilles rupture is that it can destroy a lot of players' careers. Players are probably one of the only people to really kind of recover to their full ability from an Achilles rupture was Dominique Wilkins. He was probably the exception to the rule so far. I know, Chauncey Billups, it put a stop to his career. Kobe had an Achilles rupture because of that, he started to really get into his decline kind of a lot faster than he probably would have without it. Patrick Ewing had one. He wasn't quite as effective after that. And it's just a very tasking injury on the players. Rudy Gay, as I talked about earlier, had one, but it didn't drop him off too far. But what I'm interested to see is, science has gotten better. A lot of recovery, a lot of the workouts that they do to really kind of get their body back into form has gotten so much better. So I really want to see, how he's able to come back from that. But the fact that so many teams didn't want him for that long-term deal was what really pushed him to sign with the Warriors, even though it's only for 1 year. But the Lakers only wanted him for 2 years. The Celtics didn't really want him, or I think they wanted him for 2 years. Same thing with the Pelicans. He just wasn't getting the offers that he wanted, and it's kind of a mistake from the other teams. So at the end of the day, you can't really blame him for it. I never really hold free agency against players. Take advantage of it. It's at the end of the day, it's not about the fans. It's about what the players want. And even though some people highly disagree with that, it's definitely what I believe. The players need to do what's best for themselves because it's a business, and they need to do what they need to do to be successful. I think that's all I have time for today. Gonna have another episode next Wednesday. Let me know what you thought of the episode. I know a lot of it was kind of shaky. This is my first time doing this type of thing. Just kind of bear with me for the first time for the first few episodes as I'm getting used to it. I'm really trying my hardest to get better at it. Comment down below if what you thought what your ideas are on these free agency signings, and what you might want to see in the next episode. During or also, I still need someone to, or I need help making a logo. I kind of having trouble figuring it out right now. So if you want to help me out, I'll leave my Instagram in the description below. DM me. Let me know if you want to help, and leave a like on the video if you liked it. Obviously, subscribe, and I hope you guys have the day you desire.